It's story time. 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 All right, we are back for episode 4, I'm pretty sure. I took a little hiatus to handle some business, but I'm back, and I have been stewing over what I think about this whole series, because like I've mentioned before, I don't think much these days about what I was really thinking at the time. But I admit through this process of excavation that I still use a lot of what I've learned in my latest work, especially my Peillustrations and my inklings, which I'll show later on. I really adhere to the periodolic and nephelococcygia theories in terms of seeing recognizable figures and subjects in amorphous, if that's the right word, textures and folds and gradients and lines, and long story short, cloud watching taken to the next level. But like we did in episode 3, I'm going to do a introductory Q&A to kind of humanize this process. I want to break the ice with just random generated questions, kind of loosen the lips and exercise my mind and speak a little bit before I go on about more abstract ideas and, loopy ideas. So the first question that I got was, what's the way you find yourself procrastinating most? And that's a really hard question for me to answer. I mean, most questions are for me because I kind of read too much into a question and I come out with a million different answers. And here I am procrastinating the answer. But recently, one of the biggest things that I do to procrastinate anything that I must do, I hardly find to be procrastinating, but according to family members and friends that I may have mentioned this to in the past, it seems kind of excessive to take this activity to such a lengthy degree. And my best form of procrastination is petting my cat. I will scratch him in a million different ways. They say there's a million ways to skin a cat, but obviously I'm not going to be skinning my cat, Meowgie. Don't worry, I love you. He's hanging out right below me, sleeping. But I have a million ways to scratch my cat, and it's one of his favorite parts of the day. I scratch him like he scratches his scratch post with a fever, with a purpose. And he's kind of like my, mandolin or guzheng with the many strings and a long instrument. And I like to play his purr and just make him feel loved. But then again, is that procrastination, or is that just tending to your companion, to your pet, to your brother, to your sister, whatever your pet is? Like, giving them attention isn't really procrastination, but as I mentioned before, it gets to a pretty long session where I might be laying there scratching him for like a half hour. And I really should be getting to work, handling random business, and I just want to sit there and know that he's loving life. And maybe it's a little bit of a denial, like maybe I don't love what I'm about to do, so I'm going to make sure I leave some love before I go do anything else. But then I might go do that thing and then feel like a half hour wasn't enough, and I'll stop what I'm doing, or he'll come back, he'll come up and like meow at me and say, "Hey dude, like you could have done another 15. Easy. Let's see what you got." And then done. Oh shit. It's my first hype train. This is one of those things that could be considered procrastination. Oh, you might not have even heard it. This mic is kind of good about, handling background noise, but I won't know until I listen back to this. But yeah, I live by a train. There's that, but I don't mind it. My cat is louder, so a train is a minute noise. Okay. Second question. What do you know how to do that's useless? Paint. No, I'm joking. Draw. No, I'm joking. Sculpt. No. I mean, I think it's useful, but a lot of people might see it as a waste of time. But that depends on what you consider time to be, what you consider to be valuable. I love art, so no, art is not a waste of time or useless or anything like that. I've provided a lot with art, I believe. But that being said, kicking that elephant out of the room, what is something I do that is useless? Maybe beatboxing? Is that useless, or is entertainment useless? Because it doesn't serve a tactile function. It's more of a conceptual, spiritual, emotional satisfaction. But I find that useful to get you through all the bullshit, like the mundane parts of life that are repetitive. I do find it to be useful. What is something I know how to do that is useless? Fuck. I don't know. The problem is someone else might see my life and think, dude, you're wasting your time. Like, what is all this? Like, I'm looking around my room and I see all these just psychedelic portals that I find to be useful towards how I perceive life, and how I perceive life affects how I handle life and what I do with my life, and what I do with my life to go handle my life and enjoy my life. So I don't know. I'm pretty good at finding obscure anime to watch. I used to do it more earlier on in my life. These days I'm usually making Peibis or miscellaneous toys, but someone might consider anime to be a waste of time or useless, and maybe they're right. I am one of those guys that's updated on One Piece. Yes, sir. But I'm the type of otaku that is really talented at finding obscure anime from all sorts of genres. I'm not ashamed to say I watch this or that. You wouldn't believe the library that I have in here. It's probably part of why I want to build my own story with my illustrations. I kind of see my own archetypal characters, and I've learned a lot from the amount of anime I've watched. Obviously, other television series and movies. But my ability to find the plethora of anime that I have seen might be seen as useless to a larger majority of the population. But all right, that being said, we are past the Q&A. Also, if you're not interested in these random little tidbits, feel free to, skip past 10 minutes. I'm usually done with this by then, but also get used to rants. I do ramble. It's part of my process. But all right, and sometimes you'll see this little guy show up. I just figured out how to make him appear. He's my little buddy, my little Peibi. So yeah, where were we? We were discussing the waterfall, the second to last fabric-based piece that I did in this series. It wasn't the last time I ever drew cloth, but it was definitely the second to last time I ever drew cloth with this frame of mind and to this degree, and especially at this level. Once you do something like this with this concept, you kind of want to see what's next. And as much as I enjoy repetition and how much it satisfies my OCD type mentality and mental structure, I like to move past it at a certain level and see how I can step on top of that and, climb the mountain that is my artistic prowess, my purpose, the next view that I want to see as an artist. I don't want to just, as much as I could, I have learned not to just sit at one spot for an entire month or 2 months getting this one view down when I can take what I saw in that view and chase another view like it, but at a higher peak so I could see more below me and acknowledge higher and higher peaks. So after I did this piece, I was obsessed with how often I was seeing the pareidolia phenomenon, where you find various figures and even animals, and obviously human faces are among the easier things to spot. And I wanted to take what I learned about drawing fabric and sculpting it the way I want it and casting the light. I also wanted to prove to people that they may see this at the time that I was doing this and in the future, that I did this with intent. I wasn't doing it entirely randomly. I sculpted the shirt to be all these different forms because I found them intriguing, unique, just captivating on so many levels. And keep in mind, this is all one shirt. This entire series, I took one shirt and kept crumpling it into all the different potential forms to show how any one thing could be seen on so many levels, on an infinite scale. Like it can, any one thing can be anything, and I found that fascinating. That's like an underlying theme to the series. But then I wanted to show my level of control with this randomness and build something recognizable on a bigger picture level, less about seeing like, a crane over here or someone's face looking left over here, It was less about those little pictures, and I wanted to make pictures closer to what I accomplished with the waterfall in this, but with a reference to the pareidolia phenomenon where you see faces initially. And I wanted to build a face, a profile, out of the same T-shirt that I had learned to sculpt and manipulate on this level. So I hung this up with the rest and took out a whole new sheet of paper and started building this guy. This is, I've had people think it's Kobe or the Fresh Prince or Tyler the Creator. I've had all sorts of references like that, but I'm just like, dude, it's just black and white pencil on, or it's just black pencil on white paper. So, like no, this is a black and white photo. So, tossing that out there because I know I'm already used to that. But this was a portrait that I did of myself. I was 20 at the time that I did this, and it was late 19, early 20s, or early in my year 20. So I was in a phase where I was wearing a bent back hat. I was still skating. I had this vibe. And I remember starting this piece with this cheek where the shirt was more bulbous and had less wrinkles. I wanted to cast more planes of light, high light, because after so many years of doing self-portraits, I knew what it took to build the depth and the form of a face, but I was trying to mimic those forms with the nature I witnessed in these t-shirt folds and the direction that I had the light. And wherever it's dark, those were t-shirts that I was casting the light from behind, or I was creating a shadow where the t-shirt was being covered by an element that isn't drawn in this, but I drew the caves, the fabric folds within the caves of the forms that I sculpted. So anything that is like the dark hairline or under the chin, the neck, those are all cavernous crumples of t-shirts that I was casting major shadows on, but still acknowledging the nature of the folds without such high light. You can notice that I built the lips out of one t-shirt. I was trying to create overlaps of different layers where it was kind of spiraling around and created the top and bottom lip. And I used the collars anytime I wanted to reference like a specific texture that I saw. So I would pull a collar out of the folds and use that as a tight texture to acknowledge these darker areas that I couldn't accomplish accurately with a shadow because I needed to cast a certain light on the shirt to create lips that would protrude. So the collar striations were a great solution for that. And also I had to create dents to make like a general mustache. I didn't have as long of a beard as I do now in this very moment, but I had usually rocked like a 5 o'clock shadow, if not a week later than that. So I was trying to cast these dents within the fabric and make sure the light cast a shadow, so those dents would create a contour of a strand of mustache. Also, you can see a seam of the shirt for like one of the shoulders. I just love reminding people that this is a t-shirt. It's not anything that I made up. Everything that you see here is something that I sculpted to be and then drew as sculpted. So this is a sculpture before it's a drawing. I think a lot of people can see this and think I just made up these folds, but I did, but not the way most people think. Also with this, I recognize there's some elements that I like to leave loose, so there are extra reminders that yes, this is a t-shirt. It isn't actually a portrait of a face, but you seeing a face in this collection of abstract folds makes you more open to seeing other things in it, because this was never a face at any moment. This is one t-shirt that I sculpted 40, 50 times to be what you see. Just to help people look back at previous works and be like, wait, okay, now I see how this can look like something. I'm going to see if I can find those animals or those smaller facial characters or the scenery or plant like flowers or whatever. This was a huge exercise for it on its own, but also to help illuminate why I was doing everything else that led up to this, what I was able to see, and what I believe others can see in these textures that lend themselves to obscure, ambiguous visions. Also, I really like this idea of using the collars, which have the striped striations, to create, like here I use it for like a wrinkle in the forehead, just like I used it for a dark spot of the lip. But here I'm using it more texturally to showcase hair. Like this is hair that's being pressed down by the edge of this hat. And also just like the cheek, I tried to tap into more bulbous crumples for the hat so it would stand out more than the rest of the face, because it protrudes more, but it doesn't have as stark of a highlight because it was not a white underlying brim. It was gray, so I was trying to accomplish that and also use the collars like the lip to create a dark spot that was the rim of the brim. The rim of the brim. And also each eye is actually one t-shirt that I sculpted the bottom rim of the t-shirt and made that fold out, and then like created the shadows with the bottom rim of the t-shirt, and then I used the collar to wrap what I sculpted, the iris and the pupil with the eyelids. So the collar of your shirt is the eyelids that you see here. So I was trying to fold them to mimic the shape of the eyelids. So when I looked at my t-shirt, in my eyes, no pun intended, I saw the eyeballs, but it takes someone seeing them drawn in this black and white fashion to be convinced, like, oh, hey, yeah, I do see the eyes. But if they were to see my t-shirt just lying on my bed without knowing what my intention was, they'd probably, just sit on it and not realize it was anything more than dirty laundry. I feel like that concept is pretty big for me, too, because I think a lot of people overlook these visuals that are all around them, these signs that are all around them, and we just assume it's the equivalent of dirty laundry. Something just needs to be done about it, and they're overlooking these blessings and these miracles of the visual world, even essential world like auditory textures and sensory touch textures and things like that people take for granted. So these might seem mundane, but over time the concept really grew into helping illuminate how deep the structure of our surroundings are, and these things that are very easily overlooked. So I'm kind of forcing people to see to what extent life can be seen, and using a shirt, something so mundane, is a great way to open people's eyes to how something so insignificant or seemingly so insignificant can be, according to many people, blown out of proportion. But what does a microscope do but blow something out of proportion so that you can see it on a more minute level? This is my conceptual microscope. And just like the hair, I tried to instead create with the collar striations a tighter crumple to mimic kind of the scrunchy nature of a beard, the curly nature of a beard, and try to create stark shadows to mimic the cast shadow on one side that isn't catching the light, and then try to illuminate more with the light, how close it was to the shirt, areas of that same beard but with more light. And my ear is tucked in to the shirt or the hat. I mean, I'm not wrong. It is tucked into a shirt. It's all tucked into a shirt. But I mean, I'm OCD. You'll learn more and more how I handle that. But I had this thing where I felt more comfortable with the tops of my ears tucked into the rim of my hat. And I wore my hat this way so that bad vibes, bad juju could come at me and then kind of slide over the top. And just like if I was wearing my hat and it was like this, I feel like everything would stop and then just like rain down on my parade. So this was a conceptual way for everything to kind of go over my head. Just random little things like that. Also, a little fun fact: I had a teacher that told me that I something along the lines that she said something along the lines where I was mentioning to somebody, oh hey, like the hardest thing about this is keeping the white space white and not smudging the color pencil and respecting the void around this. And she was like, oh, that's you're putting too much energy into that. It's very easy to keep a white space white without ever doing something like this. I was very offended at the time. I've learned to treat the space around my subject differently, not because of her, but I do remember how obsessed I was with keeping the intentional white space just as meticulously, put down that way by by not making marks. I was making the mark of the absence of marks. And if I was loose with it, it would make the tightness of all the work inside the subject seem not credible on some level. I was absolutely obsessed. So I used a lot of the techniques that I learned from my previous pieces that were much larger. I mean, this one is behind me and it's like 30, 40 inches tall. So it's still pretty large, but I learned, especially from the large waterfall, which is 4 feet wide, how to use my magazine paper technique to keep the surface clean and my hands off the paper. I have done things where I use like the tip of a paintbrush or something like a level to hold my wrist, but I like my wrist, especially with this style, to be resting directly on the paper that it's drawing on. I paint differently. I paint with a raised wrist, but this drawing style requires a firm plant on the surface that I'm drawing on with my wrists and the bottoms of my the sides of my hands. So that's why it was a huge ordeal for me to keep the space white, keep the pencil lines like from smudging, because this is not a medium that can be erased. If you know black color pencil, you know that any attempt to erase it just creates a smear, and at best it leaves the mark of the pencil on the paper, and you see this invisible line. That is I'm neurotic on this level, especially at this time where I was less loose about my work and I was very intentional about everything being the way I intended. And it's funny that I do this structure that seems so wild and abstract, but trying to hone in that abstraction to make something truly intentional and controlled. It's kind of how I perceive my ambitions in life. I aim to accomplish abstract and obscure like missions, but I try to attain some sort of control over the abstract. I feel like there is magic in there. But I also, over time, wanted to leave this behind because, as you'll notice later on, this style gets tighter and tighter and tighter and more obsessive, and my OCD really spikes, and I had to eventually blow back up because I was entering a black hole of obsession to this tight level of control, and I wanted to find a style where I could let loose and let things be without them intending to be any one thing, without referencing anything but my feelings. Yeah, this is wild. Just looking back at it. It's in my room, but I barely glance at this. I'm always looking at something that's in my mind that I want to bring out, or I'm looking at my Peibis and thinking about the archetypal things that they stand for and how they should interact. So you'll learn about that later on in these episodes, but I rarely look back at pieces like this, and I'll say this over and over again. I stay out of my past as much as I can, my own personal past. Anyone else's past that you come across is your current present, but for me, looking back at these previous works is sometimes painful or overwhelming or distracting or irrelevant. So it's pretty trippy to be doing this little journey and looking at this portrait, and it's going to get even trippier because the next ones that I'll be showing are my iconography series. Like I said, this is the last fabric series, and this is also the last one I did. I feel like it was the most appropriate title I could have given any of these, is the fabric of face and time, or wrinkles of face and time. I've always been fascinated with the concepts of the fabric of space and time, and how it folds to be the world that we all live in, and the universe. I always felt like anytime I did these pieces, it was like a portrait of the universe, as close as I could get it, or referencing the nature of the universe and how it wrinkles, and every tight area is like a concentration of gravity where the fabric kind of dips, and where there's openness, the universe has a larger degree of dark matter, ironically, where things can have more space to breathe in the universe, but it all collectively means something more than the mundane materials that compose the universe. Just like this is composed out of a oil-based wax on a hot pressed papyrus. You have the materials, but then when it all is clustered together and seen from a bigger picture and applied to a larger concept, it becomes this portrait, not necessarily of a face, but of an idea, of a presence. And many people would, they dub that presence to be God or Allah or the Creator. So, I mean, I warn you, I ramble. So that's that with that. And our next episode will be the first iconography series, or first piece. I might do one or two pieces at a time of the iconography series, where I started drawing smaller and smaller textures and tried to pull in the people in my life. I feel like I was not ignoring, but I was so obsessed with this style that I was ignoring and it's actually, this piece led me to think about what this character was looking at. Like, he's staring off into the void, and it is a portrait of me at the time, and I would look at it, and I knew all the potential of what was within this piece, but I could not ignore the gaze, like what they were peering into, what was fascinating their gaze. And it made me look around me in my current life and just observe my surroundings with this honed level of observation and perspective. And I started seeing these macrocosmic and microcosmic dualities in the people around me, and seeing all the detail that compose their lives and their universes, and where they crumple in their life and where they expand in their life. And I was very fascinated I was fascinated by the idea of representing the people in my life and adorning those people with the objects and motifs that surrounded me, and using what I knew about my friends at the time to help illustrate archetypes of personality and struggle, and I used to call, like, the ecosystem, the ego system, the structure of your wants and desires, and how that affects how the world revolves around you, or how you revolve around your world. So I'm skipping over a bunch of pieces between this and my first iconography piece. It really was me doing, like, small studies of tight textures of the things that were around me, and just trying to build my confidence in drawing smaller and smaller folds, because I kind of wanted to squish all of this into a smaller piece of paper. I was kind of sick of drawing on these large pieces of paper. I felt like I could get denser and still fit all of this into a smaller space. Like, at this point, I'm kind of finding it interesting and maybe possible, but I'm not going to do it because I'm trying to be progressive with my style. But I could draw this portrait at the scale that you're seeing it on your computer screen, and it would look like it is, but it would all fit in that, what could be 3 inches by 5 inches on your screen or smaller. I could draw that, and that was kind of what I was hoping to achieve. And I was finding textures that would replicate that scale or density. It was, I thought it would save time, but really it was just as meticulous. And if anything, it got gruesome. It was. You'll you'll see. You'll see what I mean. But the next piece will be a extension of this portrait. I was trying to see, or no, not the next piece. The next piece was me trying to find the thing that could be the motif that I could use to be the thing that connects my immediate community, and use that immediate community as a microcosm of the relationships that people all over the world carry, whether it's their family or their family of friends, or even their treatment of strangers, just your general community. But it's best to understand your own personal situation so that you can expand upon that and make sense of the world that surrounds your little galaxy that is your, personal experience in this massive world. So I'm gonna try to keep it a surprise. I'm really excited to share this next piece. I was very proud because it shows my newfound abilities to draw anything that I wanted, but also to build worlds within my structures to reinforce this idea of anything could be anything. And I don't know if I have the words yet. I was talking to my brother the other day, and he said that I could never be a podcast because my words need visuals to make sense. I need that crossover to have the words kind of fill in the visuals fill in the blanks for the words that I just cannot find to express it. But with the visual, I think we'll have better luck making sense of what I'm talking about right now. But it makes me more excited to pull up this picture and get to zoom in, because I feel like a lot of people don't get this opportunity on my Instagram, and no one really knows the depths of my website to give it a shot, or it might be annoying to zoom in on a desktop screen, and I can kind of guide you around the community of textures and things that I saw in these textures that I referenced. And I'll keep the motif a surprise until our next episode, which will be episode 5, suckers. But all right, I think this is a wrap for episode 4. I'm going to leave y'all with the next episode of the Peibi Playhouse. Over time, the Peibi Playhouse will become more animated. I start jumping into stop motion to give these characters more life, but these first characters that I'm sharing in these episodes are kind of like the mythology that leads up to the main characters that you meet later on as it becomes more episodic. Is that a word? It should be. You know what I mean. So enjoy this next episode, and for the meantime, enjoy your day, enjoy your night, and enjoy your time in general. Peace.